Hi my loves, welcome back. Today I'm going to do the big birthday book haul. I'm not going to lie, it's pretty immense. There are a lot of books here. I'm going to try and speed through them because otherwise we will be here forever. But I had a very bookish birthday. Zach got me some books. I'll admit he had a list because unsurprisingly I am super annoying to buy books for, especially if you're not like immersed in the book world. I got a Waterstones voucher. It wasn't actually on the day of my birthday, but the day we were celebrating my birthday, I had a very leisurely stroll around the Waterstones in Piccadilly, picking up things that I wasn't really familiar with, but I also used my voucher on books which were on my TBR. So yeah, I spent that extremely promptly. I got some bookish gifts in the mail, which I am very excited to talk to you about. And finally, I bought myself some secondhand books, not all of which have arrived. So there will be a second mini part to this video, maybe in a vlog or something in the future. Yeah, as a present to myself, I bought myself a few kind of backlist secondhand titles as well. So yes, as I say, there are a lot of books here, so let's get into it. First of all, the books that Zach got me, starting with A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a monk and robot book. I think there are two so far. And it does say Hugo Award winner on the front. I'm not sure whether that refers to Chambers herself or this particular book. I think it just refers to Chambers. So unsurprisingly, it is about some robots. It's been centuries since the robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools. Centuries since they wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. One day, the life of a tea monk is upended by the arrival of a robot, there to honour the old promise of checking in. So yeah, I think it's just an encounter between a monk and a robot, but this is supposed to be kind of heartwarming sci-fi, which is one of my favourite types of sci-fi, and I'm really looking forward to it. It seems to be much loved, this book. Now, a lot of these books are unsurprisingly very inspired by our Patreon community, and this is one of those. This is called There Is No Anti-Memetics Division, and it's by, I think it's by a collective or something, QNTM, Quantum, I suppose. And this was inspired by Yasmin, who championed this book in one of our reviews on Patreon. And yeah, I think this one is going to be challenging, interesting, and unlike anything I've read before. I mean, you only have to flick through it to see some of the interesting stuff that is going on there. An anti-meme is an idea with self-censoring properties, an idea which, by its intrinsic nature, discourages or prevents people from spreading it. And obviously this is about the anti-memetics division. So I think it's about trying to curb anomalous anti-memes. How do you contain something you can't record or remember? How do you fight a war against an enemy with effortless, perfect camouflage? A difficult one to summarize or describe, but I'm really looking forward to this one. Okay, how are we even saying this? 2666, maybe? By Roberto Bolaño. I've been meaning to read Bolaño for a little while. There are a few of these kind of big iconic books in this haul, as you are about to see. Books I would like to read in the next couple of years, ideally. Okay, so the blurb on this one is not giving much away to me, but apparently it is about an elusive German author and the unsolved and ongoing murders of women in Santa Teresa, a violent city. It's also about the Eastern Front in World War II, the academic world, mental illness, journalism, and the breakdown of relationships and careers. But yes, Bolaño's novels are widely renowned to be masterpieces. I'm very much looking forward to trying his work myself. And yeah, I'm a big novel girl. I know some people are really put off by huge books, but I love a doorstopper book. Okay, next we have Andy Clark's The Experience Machine, How Our Minds Predict and Shape Reality. Now, from what I've heard about this one, I think it's really going to speak to me. I actually have read some Andy Clark before in my first and second year of university when I was doing philosophy. I can't remember what he calls himself. I think he's a philosopher of cognitive science, something like that. So he's kind of melding the humanities and sciences together. If you know anything about what I like in my nonfiction, that's immediately going to appeal to me. And yeah, this came out recently and I am so excited to read it. So this book is going to show us, I think, how experience itself, because it is guided by prior expectation, is a kind of controlled hallucination. We don't passively take in the world around us. Instead, our mind is constantly making and refining predictions about what we expect to see. This even applies to our bodies, as the way we experience pain and other states is shaped by our expectations. From the most mundane experiences to the most sublime, it is our predictions that sculpt our experience. So yeah, I think this is kind of one of those groundbreaking works, and I cannot wait to get to it. Okay, another iconic doorstopper of a novel. This is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Look, Wallace is a little controversial for many, many reasons. I have read a little bit of David Foster Wallace before. So I've read The Pale King, or most of it, at uni. And yes, I want the bragging rights to say I've read Infinite Jest. And like, as a person just interested obviously in literature, you know, iconic pieces of literature, I want to read Infinite Jest. So yeah, who knows if I'm going to like it. I did quite like the bits of The Pale King I read. You know, I like a challenging book anyway, so we'll see. But good to have this one on the shelves now so it can stare at me and you know, guilt me into reading it. Okay, next up, Hard Rain Falling by Don Carpenter. I also think this might be my first NYRB Classics edition book. And this I put on my shortlist because I just saw it in a shop in the last few months. I was intrigued by it. First of all, I just love the cover. That was part of it. And I never heard of it, never heard anyone speak about it, so who knows what it will be like. But apparently it's a tough as nails account of being down and out, but never down for good. A Dostoevskian tale of crime, punishment, and the pursuit of an ever elusive redemption. So it's kind of giving Dennis Johnson vibes a little bit, but who knows whether it will actually be similar to him in kind of style. But that's Hard Rain Falling. Next up, Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. I've been meaning to read more Kurt Vonnegut since I finished Slaughterhouse-5, which I really enjoyed. And, you know, such an influential figure in science fiction, kind of postmodernist science fiction. And I think this is about the nuclear age, about the Cold War, about one of the fathers of the atomic bomb. Told with deadpan humour and bitter irony, Kurt Vonnegut's cult tale of global destruction is a funny and frightening satire on the end of the world and the madness of mankind. Also, gorgeous cover on this Penguins Classics edition. We have a China Mieville that I didn't already own. This is The Census Taker. Again, I've seen this a lot in shops recently and just desperately wanted to own it. It's a beautiful cover. In a remote house on a hilltop, a lonely boy witnesses a profoundly traumatic event. He tries and fails to flee. Left alone with his increasingly deranged parent, he dreams of safety, of joining the other children in the town below, of escape. I think this is slightly challenging in a Mieville-esque way from the reviews I've seen online, but I'm definitely very interested to read it, so we shall see. I think it's one of his more recent books, which is why I didn't already have it, because it's not in the editions that I have. We've got another book from the International Booker long list. This is Boulder by Ava Baltazar. I've just been intrigued by the reviews of this one. I think it's about motherhood. It's about a lesbian couple, I think, one of whom feels kind of changed by motherhood into a mother, and the other is a kind of more reluctant mother. So it's about the kind of contrast between the two. We've got a Mantell. This is The Assassination of Margaret Thatcher. I like these 4th Estate editions, and I'd quite like to kind of collect the whole set because I do have all of Mantell's other books, I think, in these editions. And I think this is actually a collection of stories and possibly one of the first things she ever published. So need I say more? I want to read all of Mantell's work at some point. Finally, another enormous book, the most famously enormous book in the world. It's War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I do love this cover. Some of these classics covers are a bit crap, but this one is very beautiful. I'm sad because it looks so pristine and beautiful now, but due to the fact that it is absolutely huge, this is definitely going to get pretty bashed up when I finally get around to reading it. I would quite like to read this one next year, so we'll see how we go with that, but it's War and Peace, okay? I don't think you need me to tell you too much about it. Okay, I received a couple bookish parcels from a couple wonderful members of the Patreon community. And huge thank you to Varsha and Alex. this was incredibly kind of you, and I'm returning the favour and you can't stop me. Okay, but it is of course always wonderful to receive gifts from other book lovers. So Alex sent out North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballingred, and there's a story behind this one because she mentioned this one on the Discord a little while back, and I don't think any of us had really heard of Nathan Ballingred. And then of course I read The Strange by him, which came out in the last year or so, maybe even this year, and I absolutely loved it, and I reviewed it for the Sunday Times, etc, etc. And so Nathan Ballingred seemed to have appeared in our lives all of a sudden, and so she sent me out the book that she had read, which is North American Lake Monsters, which is a collection of stories. I believe he's only written 2 novels and otherwise writes stories predominantly, and I also think he usually predominantly writes horror rather than the kind of mishmash of genres that The Strange was. I am so excited for these. Also, the cover is incredible, and apparently in this book Nathan Ballingred uses the trappings of the Gothic and the uncanny to investigate the loneliest and darkest corners of contemporary American life. I like this little quote, so I'm going to read it out. What sets this collection of short stories apart is the way the supernatural, magical and horrific are utilised like a light source, illuminating dark places while casting even deeper shadows. What a wonderful sentence. But anyway, and so this was published by a small publisher called Small Beer Press, and when Alex mentioned this, Varsha mentioned this. So Alex also sent out At the Mouth of the River of Bees by Key Johnson, I want to say that's pronounced, but I have no idea. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on Small Beer Press, because even just looking in the back here, they've published Kelly Link, they've published Karen Lord, they've published Maureen McHugh, Karen Joy Fowler, Jeffrey Ford. Lots of those names I recognise from my big weird anthology, so I might look into some of those as well. So this is another collection of stories, and again, thank you Alex so much for sending these out. And again, I think these kind of sit on the literary fantasy border. So many wonderful quotes on the back here. These stories feature cats, bees, wolves, dogs, and even that most capricious of animals, humans. So yes, I think I'm going to buddy read this one with Alex and Emma, hopefully. And then Varsha, otherwise known as Between Bookends, sent out a few books as well. I love her Instagram. I have been following Varsha long before I had the Patreon community. And I highly recommend you all go follow her. I have 100% mentioned her before because she has put me on to so many good books in the past. I will leave all of her links down below. She's always adding to our TBRs in our reviews, and I was so excited to receive a parcel from her. Now, she was very recently championing this book, So Long See You Tomorrow by William Maxwell, as a kind of forgotten American classic, basically. On a winter morning in the 1920s, a shot rings out on a farm in rural Illinois. A man named Lloyd Wilson has been killed, and the tenuous friendship between 2 lonely teenagers, one privileged yet neglected, the other a troubled farm boy, has been shattered. Let me try and find the way that Varsha described this, because it was like incredible. Right. Okay, Varsha described it as has the emotional heft of Stoner with the farming family tragedy of 1,000 Acres and pared back almost McCarthy-esque prose. So I mean, if that doesn't sell it to you, I don't know what will. And she also sent me 2 books that I haven't heard of, seen word of, which is always very exciting to me, I think. So first is a historical novel, and it's called The Arrender by Joseph Boyden. It's set in the 1600s in Canada, and I think it follows the kind of wars between North American native peoples and also a Jesuit missionary as well. And Varsha said it explores the conflict of beliefs, mysticism and culture between these different groups. And she also sent through The Arrival of Missives by Alia Whiteley, and this is a speculative fiction novel which I've never heard of, but Varsha said that it reminded her of Pew, or Pew reminded her of it. In the aftermath of the Great War, Shirley Fern dreams of challenging the conventions of rural England, where life is as predictable as the changing of the seasons. And I think it's about the arrival of a new person in small town England, so that definitely does give Pew vibes, except it's English, not Southern American. Okay, moving on now to the books I bought myself with my voucher, secondhand books, starting with The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This is a much loved historical fiction series. I don't think it's going to be like super literary, but I think it's going to be an absorbing read. I think that's mostly how people describe this one. So yes, it's set in the 1100s and is a spellbinding epic tale of ambition, anarchy and absolute power, set against the sprawling medieval canvas of 12th century England. There's quite a few of these, I think, so if I like it, there's more to read, which I appreciate. Also, I think they've just re-released them in these covers, which are slightly nicer than the old ones, which again, I appreciate. I picked up Light Years by James Salter. I've had this one on my TBR for a little while. Can't remember where I found it specifically. I think it's about a marriage where fine cracks are beginning to spread through the shimmering surface, this says. It's been a while since I've read a book about a marriage, I think, but it's definitely a genre, it's a thing. I'm very intrigued by that one. It has great reviews, so looking forward to it. I've got A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Again, I've heard wonderful things about this book, and I think it's about a family living in Brooklyn. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of a modern classic, this one. Next we have The Wake by Paul Kingsnorth. I've been very intrigued by this one for quite some time, and I just love the way they marketed this one, a post-apocalyptic novel set 1,000 years ago, because so much, I think one of the reasons why I love historical fiction, and when an author does this well, I really connect with it, is that so much of historical fiction requires the same world building skills as speculative fiction. Because yeah, these are alien worlds essentially to us these days, especially ones set 1,000 years ago. It tells the story of Buckmaster of Holland, a free farmer of Lincolnshire, owner of 3 ox gangs, a man clinging to the old gods as the world changes drastically around him. And then I think it kind of covers the Battle of Hastings, invading Normans, and it's written in this shadow tongue, that's what the author calls it, a version of Old English updated so as to be understandable for the modern reader. I mean, I'm not going to be able to show you here, but it's quite something to even glance at, and will definitely frustrate a lot of readers. But I am so interested in this book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I can't remember where I said this recently, but Thomas Mann has been calling me. I don't know why. I just keep seeing his books around and I'm like, I think I should maybe read some Thomas Mann at some point. So I've got Buddenbrooks here. It's a minutely imagined chronicle of 4 generations of a North German mercantile family. A work so true to life that it scandalised the author's former neighbours in his native Lübeck. Generational family saga. We love to see it. Okay. I picked up I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home, which is Laurie Moore's new book. I've actually not read any Laurie Moore before, but she is a much loved author. Yeah, I can't tell if this book is I think this book might be a little bit of a departure for her because it's a ghost story. To my mind, she has written realism before. Perhaps she's dipped into this before, and Varsha herself actually reviewed this one recently and she had kind of mixed feelings about it. High up in a New York City hospice, Finn sits with his beloved brother Max, who is slipping from one world into the next. But when a phone call summons Finn back to a troubled old flame, a strange journey begins, opening a trapdoor in reality. Yeah, I think it's going to be a kind of weird tale, but I'm really looking forward to trying this one because on paper I feel like it should appeal to me. This book just draws my eye every time I'm in a bookshop. I just absolutely love the colours on the cover. I'm obsessed. This is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese, I want to say is how you say that, but I'm not entirely sure. This is another generational family saga. It came out this year. He has written one before, which is called Cutting for Stone, which I haven't read. Yeah, I think it follows a family in which in each generation at least one person dies by drowning. So there's a little bit of an element of the strange in there as well, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into this one. Okay, you can see I got this one off the clearance racks at Waterstones. I need to take this sticker off. But this is The Count of Monte Cristo by Dumas. Again, I've been meaning to read this one for a while. Everyone that reads it seems to really, really love it, which I feel like is fairly rare for a classic. Yet another absolutely huge book. This haul is definitely dominated by massive books. I'm really looking forward to it. So this one I picked up in Waterstones itself because I've never heard of it before, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do at the moment whenever I go into a bookshop, is pick up books I am not familiar with. This is Journey to the South by Michal Ajvaz, who is He was born into a Russian family in Prague. And yeah, I think this is a Czech literature classic and has only recently been translated into English, something like that. And I think it's going to be a kind of challenging novel. It's sort of a crime novel apparently, but also, yes, it's got some interest, it does some interesting things with form, seems to be what I have gleaned about it. I think it's kind of a story within a story within a story kind of book. And I also love the cover. You can see the kind of the crime reference with this little man walking away. So yeah, we'll see how I get on with this one. I saw this and I had to pick it up. It's 3 novels by Yuri Herrera. I read 10 Planets this year and really liked it. I found it fascinating and weird, and I wanted to read more Yuri Herrera, and his other books from other kind of weird lovers seem to get good reviews. So this includes Kingdom Cons, Signs Preceding the End of the World, and The Transmigration of Bodies, which are his most famous books. Yuri Herrera's characters are castaways from the realms of myth, the epic, the fairy tale. This is kind of literary speculative fiction, and so it should be right up my street as well. We have Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety. Again, I cannot remember where I found this book, but it has been staring at me from my TBR list, and I just wanted to pick it up. A grand, rich, beautifully written novel about a long, not always easy friendship between 2 couples. Could be a nice, quiet book, we shall see. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize for one of his books. So that is Crossing to Safety. This one was inspired by the lovely Emily. She also has a Bookstagram, which I will leave down below. She came on to one of our reviews, which is like show and tell for books, by the way. And sold me this book. It's called Little Big. It's by John Crowley, and it just sounds wonderful. It's like a generational family saga, but with a taste of fantasy as well. Ursula Le Guin said, "This book is indescribable, a splendid madness or a delightful sanity, or both." I mean, what an endorsement. And yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to this. This one Zach actually got me. It's looking a little worse for wear. It did come secondhand. It's about time I read some Philip Roth, I feel. And this obviously is one of his most famous books, The Plot Against America. Yeah, this is an alternate history book set around World War II, after World War II. And yeah, I am again looking forward to reading this one. This one I picked up a little bit on a whim. This is another James Smith book. This is The Machine. So it's actually not. So last year I read The Ends, which is the final book in the Anomaly Quartet. They didn't have the first book of the Anomaly Quartet in the shop. So I thought they had a couple of the other ones, but not the first one. So I would like to read the rest of the Anomaly Quartet at some point, but I was very interested in the sound of this one. But yeah, I really liked The Ends from last year. So this one is a Frankenstein tale for the 21st century. Vic returned from the war, tormented by his nightmares, his once happy marriage to Beth all but disintegrated. A machine promised salvation, purging him of all memory. And yeah, I think it's about the machine. Interested to try another Smith and explore his backlist a little bit more. Okay, another one that I just picked up on a whim. This is Italo Calvino's The Complete Cosmicomics. And I have read one Calvino before. I read Invisible Cities, which was a really interesting book. I think Calvino is one of those authors that was really experimenting and doing new and exciting things when he was writing. And this one is like kind of his take on the sci-fi, I think. In it, he blends scientific fact, flights of fancy, parody and wordplay to show the strangeness and the wonders of the world. I also loved the cover. Just think it's really cool. So that's The Complete Cosmicomics. Let me know if you read it, because I'm interested. So this is Life During Wartime by Lucius Shepard. I bought an old copy of this because the new SF Masterworks one is so disgusting. So this is inspired by the acknowledgements in The Strange by Nathan Ballingrud, and he names Lucius Shepard as one of the authors who he loves. And I'm really, really intrigued by this. So apparently in this, he manages to neatly weave the science fiction movement known as cyberpunk and Latin American magic realism into a magnificently realised drama of love and moral ambiguity. Apparently his prose is really nice as well. So yeah, I also think this copy is very, very cool. This one is also inspired by the lovely Emily, who read it recently and really liked it. This is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. I think it's kind of a quiet tale. In the summer of 1922, men meet in the quiet English countryside. They're both war survivors, and out of their physical meeting comes a deeper communion with the landscape, with history, and a catching up of the old primeval rhythms of life, past and present, so cruelly disorientated by the Great War. Very much looking forward to that. So Kent Haruf has come up a couple times in our Discord recently, and I wanted to try his work. So in Holt, Colorado, Tom Guthrie is struggling to bring up his 2 sons alone. So apparently this is a novel of haunting beauty. It explores the grace and hope of every human life and mankind's infinite capacity for love. We have the final John Williams book that I didn't already own, which is Nothing But the Night. This was his first book and kind of is widely considered not as good as his other 3 books, but I am invested in John Williams now, and so I of course wanted to read it. So also, I didn't realise how tiny it was, but yeah, I think it's about one night in the life of Arthur Maxley, who receives a letter from his long estranged father. This brings up memories of his past. Looking forward to reading this one. And I think this might be the final book, The Crow Road by Ian Banks. I've been meaning to read more Ian Banks for a long time, since I read The Wasp Factory at uni, and he's kind of like a big name, you know, in the speculative fiction world, and I feel like I haven't read enough Banks. Prentice McCone has returned to the bosom of his complex but enduring Scottish family, full of questions about the McCone past, present and future. Sorry, all these books suddenly start to fall. He is also deeply preoccupied, mainly with death, drink, sex, drink, God and illegal substances. And yes, Zoe was championing this one recently in the Discord, so I'm looking forward to reading it. So with that, my loves, the epic journey is concluded. I hope you enjoyed this video. I am so excited to read these books. I think I'm going to have to squeeze some of them in this year at least. And if you'd like to buddy read any of them with me, let me know. But yes, thank you so much for watching today, my loves, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.